the lead out. I needed something like exotic and like warlike at the same time, so 4 sticks is it. We're gonna do Gog and Magog, people. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna go away to faraway lands and learn scary things. This will go up on Substack. I think for paid only. I think for paid people only. And then later this afternoon, I want to go back to the Ethereum thing. The SEC has given a nod, if not outright approval, for the new Ethereum T-Rex 3643. Sounds like a football play. Token, which is going to be used as the complete merger of like securities law and code. We've been waiting for this for 5 years. Okay, so let's talk a little crypto. It's called 4 sticks because John Bonham's playing with 2 sticks in each hand. Also, a little housekeeping. Next week we will do this book, Homo Deus. Not Homo Douche, Homo Deus. This is by Harari, who I don't really care for him, but I want to show you, like, in the theme of church and state, which is these things I'm starting. I think church and state's this final, like, name that I'm going to use for these Sunday kinds of metaphysical religious things. So, if you don't remember your Latin, this means man-god. And it's all about technology. And this is probably, I know a little bit about this book, I haven't read it yet, but this is really about the new ideology of the West, which if you remember, whenever this thing went down, the What's Your Roman Empire, Constantine became a Christian and sort of held the empire together with that. Now we're holding the empire together with just technology. That's what the book by Karp was about, The Technological Republic. And I think there's a video a video that the President of the United States put out this morning of AI generated video of him in a plane literally shitting on all the protesters yesterday. That's where we are, people. It's the Technological Republic. You got to have a little bit of fun with this because it's that crazy what's going on. So we're going to do Gog and Magog. But as usual, you know, I like to move around on many different subjects. To get started on this, the first thing you should do is go take a look at the price of gold year to date, which roughly coincides with as Trump has taken over. And the price of gold is up 60% since the beginning of the year. 60%. Now, if you can do this in your own mind, 60% looks like that. Now, just take that graph and flip it upside down so it looks like this, and that's the dollar value versus gold. In other words, you can do gold in dollar terms, or you can do dollars in gold terms. So as we get this set up with this crazy wacko thing with Gog and Magog and like all these wars and everything, like, just let's all just calm down. A couple days before 9/11, the price of gold was $250 an ounce. So with 10 grand, you could buy 400 ounces. Okay? Now you can buy 2. Just let that sink in for a minute. Before the War on Terror, you could buy 400 ounces of gold with $10,000. Now you can do 2. I'm sorry, it's not 400, it's 40. I beg your pardon. When I've done this in the past, if you go all the way back to when the Federal Reserve was created, gold was at $20 an ounce. So with $10,000, you could buy 500 ounces. Forgive me, I added a 0. So since the Federal Reserve, we've gone from 500, with 10 grand, you could buy 500 ounces to to 40 ounces right before 9/11. Now you can buy 2. So the graph looks like this. So it's maybe not that crazy to like read things out of the book of Revelation, out of the Quran, that might explain what is happening. What is happening? So there's a piece, so my source on this, and if you guys have known some of my other work, I do these things with Dajjal and monetary theory and all this stuff like all crashed together. So there's this guy named Sheikh Imran Hussein, who's not only an eschatologist, that means somebody who studies the end of the world, Armageddon, which is, you know, the basis of the Trump administration is that, right? All of these people are waiting for the rapture and the Messiah and the reconstruction of Jerusalem. So let's get into it. So there's a piece here that's only 3 minutes long. If you'll indulge me, I'll play it. This is the good Sheikh. This is about 14 years ago. It's short.
You will see the arguments. Method number 1, the water level in the Sea of Galilee. And method number 2, a day like a year, a day like a month, a day like a week.
Hold on.
Who are Gog and Magog? Are they funny-looking people or are they normal human beings? Huh? To answer that question, we have to locate a people who prior to Waylul lil Arab, prior to the time of the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, had no special links with the Holy Land. But after the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, are now obsessed with liberating the Holy Land. Only one people qualify. It's Europe. Europe, after the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, embarks upon the Crusades. It's the white people doing it, the European. It's not an essentially Christian phenomenon. Why? Because no other Christians are involved in the Crusades. Only Europe. So the Crusades are an essentially European phenomenon masquerading as Christianity. Secondly, the obsession with the Holy Land continues with the Zionist movement. But the Zionist movement is European. But it is masquerading as Jewish. How do we know that? No other Jews are involved in the effort to liberate the Holy Land.
It's only like a minute left. Hang in there.
And then finally we have the island of Britain, which is now secular and godless. But this Britain now issues the famous Balfour Declaration in 1917 that it is the intention of the British government to work for the establishment of a Jewish national home in the Holy Land. This is strange. I think I told you the only thing stranger than this ever happened in history was when the cow jumped over the moon. Huh? This strange obsession on the part of Europe for liberating the Holy Land, which they eventually did in 1919, indicates that Gog and Magog are located in European civilization. We can refine it even more than that. We can be specific within European civilization. Because the hadith is that when Gog and Magog are released, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee and start to drink the water. And by the time the last of them pass, they'll say there used to be water here. Who are they who are drinking the water from the Sea of Galilee? Not the Egyptians, not the Jordanians, not the Syrians. Who? Israel. Who in Israel? Not Banu Israel, the European. It is the European Jew who controls the state of Israel. And it is he who has established the modern economy, which is drinking the water, the industrial economy. That's where the water is going. And it is he, as the government of Israel, who has established the policy of making the deserts green. You need a lot of water to do that. So we can identify Gog and Magog not only in Europe, but also in that part of Europe which is Jewish. You will see the argument.
Okay. Now this is all weird, isn't it? I mean, this is very weird. but everything he just said there is like historically accurate. Now, the reason I got into him, a number of reasons, and while I was doing, this Bruno's called Money, Markets, and Metaphysics. Okay? He has this short piece and he says it's this simple. He goes, we're moving from the British pound sterling backed by gold to the US dollar backed by petroleum to crypto based in Jerusalem. I saw that like 3 or 4 years ago and I was like, again, this is a little bit like we're getting dressed up in Halloween costumes, okay? This isn't like we're really dealing with like factual, do I really believe that there's something called Gog and Magog and they roam the earth or something like that? It doesn't really matter. It's like saying, I saw somebody interview Jack Nicholson and they were talking about The Shining and they said, do you believe in ghosts? And he said, it's not my job to believe in ghosts or not believe in ghosts. It's my job to play the character. And that's sort of what I'm doing for you here today. Like next week, I'm going to go play this character. But about 80% of what he just explained perfectly explains what's going on. Like Trump was just in Israel talking about, remember the first thing he did when he was elected in 2016 was move the embassy to Jerusalem. And this is what this guy's getting into. Okay, so it's not just a homeland. There's something about this thing with Jerusalem. Okay, so we'll get into that here in a minute. So, I know enough classical literature like Greek and Roman. There's Polybius, there's Thucydides and Tacitus, like the classic things you read from the Greeks and the Romans. Always refer to Europeans frequently as ruddy, meaning they have like red complexion and red hair, or blonde, tall, warlike, and drunk. Okay, those things are always, there's like a whole thing about like the Gauls like sacking Rome, and the Romans were just like, just let them come in the city, let them drink all the wine, and we'll come back at 3 a.m. and slaughter them all. And that's exactly what they did. And to the Muslim world, the Crusaders, who they called the Franks, the French, when they finally took Jerusalem during the First or Second Crusade, they were like, I mean, it's sort of comical. They were like, how did we lose to these people that are just drunks? Because once all the soldiers got to Jerusalem, they just drank all day. And they're like, how did God do this to us? Okay, you get the idea. So Europeans sort of go back to this in our minds. We go back to like, you could go into any church right now and they'll be reading from the Bible and it'll reference Herod and Caesar and like what's your Roman Empire? The meme on TikTok, what's your Roman Empire? Like our brains go back to this. His brain goes somewhere else. Muslims go to the Middle East, right? They go to from roughly like, well, as they say, whenever they, from the river to the sea. They go to the Holy Land. They go to the ancient land of Mesopotamia and Egypt and so forth. They don't see the world like the Western European worldview. Worldview is your key idea here. And so in the Quran, not so much in the Bible, the Christian Bible, they overlap in that the Christian Bible, I'll just do this real quick because it's not the key that I'm trying to get to, is that God will eventually rid the earth of Gog and Magog, okay? But both of them have this thing that like Gog and Magog are like let loose, like you'd let loose 2 hounds or something like that. And from the Muslim perspective, they talk about this thing that some sort of wall that was created to keep them out. And so it's like, is that like metaphorical or allegorical? No, there's actually a real place that a real wall was created in the Caucasus Mountains between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. Okay? And we sort of know this part of the world is because it's where all these MMA fighters come from. It's like Dagestan and all that. Like these crazy fighters that nobody can beat. It's like 100-1. They never lose. It's in this very poor, rugged, brutal part of the world. These MMA fighters come out, and what do they look like? They're on the other side of the Caucasus Mountains. They have red beards. They're ruddy. I just thought of that. That's actually a good way to explain it. You know how all these Muslim guys come out and fight in MMA, and they all these like semi-red beards, like what's the guy that McGregor lost to? I can't remember his name right now. Anyways, so in the Quran it says that Gog and Magog will be held out by some sort of wall, some sort of iron or metal wall. Well, it turns out that some king, and it's called I always forget the name, the Darial Gorge. Go look it up on Google. It is like this gorge, like from a river to like 14,000 feet, like 45-degree angles on both sides, and some king or emperor or something built a wall, covered it with iron, and then covered it with copper, and I guess there's some historical explanation for this. And this is just fun to talk about. It's like Halloween or something. But Gog and Magog are on the other side of that wall. Okay? And then as he sort of tees up, and I'm going to have a little bit more fun with it and show you how it's attached to what's going on in America, Gog and Magog are going to come from Europe. They're going to come from these scary people on the other side of this wall, on the other side of the Caucasus Mountains, where, of course, we get the word Caucasian from. And these are very bad people, and it says in the Quran that nobody can destroy them. They're going to take over the world. Nobody can destroy them except Allah, except God. The story in the Bible is a little bit different. It's more, everything, like as I study this, and it's sort of fun to do it, if you put the three monotheistic religions together, like Christianity is very like otherworldly, like my kingdom's not of this world. Islam is very much of this world. Like when he says all this from the Quran, he's like, nope, this is all historical, this is all happening, and this is why Donald Trump flies to Israel and talks about Jerusalem. Okay? Judaism is in between. Judaism is sort of stuck in between. That's my rule of thumb to go through all this stuff. Now, I don't do this very often, but I actually had to take some notes for this. And again, I want to go back to this. I did a little piece to like talk about Ethereum yesterday, and I was talking about how some of the regulations are going to change, and we're going to have all this loosening and liquidation of assets through crypto. And just like I just explained to you, he was like the British Empire, the American Empire, and then there's like this new empire. He calls it the Pax Judaica. And it terrifies people. And my job, and I go like, don't be terrified. Just understand what it is and just see how to go with it. Like, what's your Roman Empire? You know, the nice Christians like met in the catacombs and did Christian stuff and drank wine and took the Eucharist. And, you know, once in a while they were thrown to the lions, but other than that, they did okay. No, but they did things differently, right? Their early, I don't know a lot about their early church, but the iconography of like the cross and the crucifixion, they didn't even use that, right? They used the fish, and they called it the way. Oh, I did want to say this, because I know this from my Roman history. If you ever go deep into early Christian history, you probably want to study also the Mithraeus mysteries. Just take a look at that. They like killed the bull, and it like changed the universe, and it's almost Christian. But the Romans didn't understand the Christians. They were like, and the reason they were usually persecuted and thrown to the lions or whatever, or they were really big on burning people, which I can't even imagine like how awful that would be. Like, it shows you the Roman brain was really pretty demented. Like, who would want to smell a burning body? Like, ugh. It's like bad enough whenever you like burn a steak on the grill. But they prosecuted them because they called them atheists, because the Christians wouldn't worship a statue. And the Roman brain didn't even understand, like, well, who is your God? And they're like, our God is not of this world, and he's not visible. And And they were like, they're atheists. They're like nihilists or something. They didn't understand them. Anyways, I go through all that because, why do I go through all that? Again, because our brain sort of goes back into a what's your Roman Empire kind of a thing. You don't even know it, but you've studied enough history. Even if you go to Washington, D.C., or your state capital, there's probably some classical building that looks Greek or Roman sitting on a hill somewhere, right? So from their perspective, things are a little bit different. So, Gog and Magog. So, again, the price of gold is sort of falling apart. The dollar's falling apart versus gold. It's even down against other currencies like the yen and the yuan, the yen and the euro, which have their own problems. So the dollar's like not collapsing, but it's sort of in a steady unraveling. To his point, it's already been announced under Trump. We have the Clarity Act and we have the Genius Act. And we have a Russian minister who said, America is just going to default into crypto. It's exactly how he described it 3 or 4 years ago. Britain, America, Jerusalem. All right, so I wanted to tease, that's not very hard to follow at all. And but the reason I'm going on about this because I think it helps you see what's going on here in America. It doesn't make it any better. I'm not for throwing middle-aged women into vans with their hands tied behind them with zip ties for any fucking reason whatsoever. Unless that person has is doing things to hurt, create mass casualties. Nobody cutting up the fucking onions in the restaurant should be thrown into a van. And that is the absolute worst of American history brought back to life. Gangs of masked men attacking brown people. Where did we see that before? Right after the Civil War. They didn't wear paramilitary uniforms, they wore white robes, right? Remember those guys? They're back. They're called ICE. But let's all calm down. So, most people don't know that Islam has an affinity for both Christianity and Judaism. The whole war on terror thing, that there's a war between Christians and Muslims, that doesn't really work. There's more likely a war between the other two religions, and Islam is very critical of the West, but it isn't like they're out to just blow it up. So they don't just think of all non-Muslims as infidels. Okay? So he spends a lot of time talking about how Russia has been returned to the Orthodox Church and is called Rum. Because if you remember your 5th grade Roman history and world cultures, these people moved from Rome to Constantinople. And then Russia, under the Tsars, Tsar means Caesar, reestablished the 3rd Rome, or in Arabic, Rum. Isn't this fun? So he makes a big effort to explain that Putin returning Russia to the Orthodox faith is like a major event in world history because they have nuclear weapons. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Pakistan does. India does. But Iran does not have nuclear weapons, and theoretically the reason they don't is because the Ayatollah believes that it's unholy. You can believe that or not, but that's what they say. All right, so before we get into the Gog and Magog thing in detail, so they have this, Islam has this Antichrist thing they call Dajjal. I love that word, Dajjal. And Dajjal has a sidekick named Al-Jassad, or something similar to that. Arabic people frequently correct me in the DM, so I'm just going to go with Al-Jassad. Al-Jasad is sometimes described in the Quran as a corruption, something that's let loose, and it sounds exactly like AI. It sounds exactly like the fear that we all have that Palantir is going to be this corruption in the entire tech system to take over the world, and that's exactly what Alex Karp argues. It's weird how perfectly that overlaps. You can go back through my Substack shit and find it. It's bizarre how perfectly that works. Dajjal has a sidekick like Lone Ranger and Tonto, and Al-Jasad is like agentic AI taking on Russia, China, and Iran, which is what's happening in America. Spooky. But I was getting ready for this yesterday, and I was watching one of his real long, like 2.5 hour things, and he was going on about like who is Dajjal, like because here's the problem: Gog, Magog, and Dajjal are to the Muslims are actually people. They're not like literary ideas like I'm fucking around with. These are like people that you can name and point at and whatever. But anyways, he was going on about Dajjal, and he's one-eyed, and he's Jewish, and he's held somewhere in the North Atlantic in chains. Okay, that's it. I get a lot of Muslim and Arabic people that listen to my stuff and they're like, how do you know all this? It's like, well, you have good sources. But as he was talking about it, and I was thinking about it, if you really want to get creeped out, and Dajjal has like no earthly enemies that can take him out. So like Dajjal and Gog and Magog are only going to be put away by Allah, by God. So, but as he was describing, I was like, could it be a nuclear weapon? And if I was a betting man right now, like just going on with this goofy sort of Halloween skit of like all this stuff. So the creator of the nuclear weapon was Jewish, dropped 2 nuclear weapons on the 33 North in Japan, one of which was a Catholic church called Nagasaki, had no industrial capacity at all. And where was the other one? One of them was just a religious center of a relatively small, insignificant town. The other one was a larger town that was more industrialized. But everybody always said, why did they blow up this like meaningless city? But they're both on the 30 Lord parallel, a lot of Masonic stuff invested in that, you know. And I think the first place they tested the bomb was at 33 degrees south. So a lot of Masonic good times with that. So that'll help us get into the Gog and Magog thing. So it was sort of weird when Trump went to have dinner with the king, wasn't it? Like, the king has spent his life like talking about climate change and carbon, and Trump is this weirdo who like makes AI stuff of like him shitting on people in like American streets. Like how, well, people. To really understand America, it's not Christian. It's not Christian nationalism. It's not, if you really study people like Lincoln and the founding fathers, they wanted nothing to do with Christianity. America was really built as something getting away from Christianity. If you want to dispute that, I'm happy to throw some emails back and forth. The Puritans were such weirdos that everybody in Europe threw them out. The Anglican Church, the people in Amsterdam didn't really want them. They went to Boston, and then they created Harvard, and then the Puritans threw out some more Puritans who became New Haven, where I went to school, and like the Puritans just can't get away from each other. They're so noxious, as the word, that nobody can really even, and this is like the thing that's running around like with Charlie Kirk and people are like, are these people even Christian? Like, do they even have like any sort of Christian? No, it's not Christianity. It's something else. So here's who Gog and Magog are. As he explains, who created Israel? England and the Ashkenazi. As he points out, it wasn't all the Jews around the world. It really wasn't America until after World War II when somebody gave Harry Truman $2 million for his campaign, as reported by Gore Vidal. So it's really the English, like the English muscle. Like JFK said, I don't think Palestine was Britain's to give away. So it's not really an American thing, although now it clearly is, right? It's 50 states, one Israel, right? And the only people that really participated in populating, and this is where it gets a little hard to talk to, so we're going to have to like calm it down a little bit for the algorithm, but is the part of the world that's roughly the Ukraine. Remember, the first person that Zelensky met with was Alex Karp when he was elected president. 1.8 million people have been killed in that war. First person he met with, Alex Karp. Spooky. But the population is really from that part of the world, and they're all Ashkenazi. There's no venom in that or anything. That's just like a fact, like an ethnic fact. Like Putin even says the second language is Russian. So how did these two groups work together? You follow me? Like, how did England work with people beyond the pale on the other side of Europe? And this is where it gets a little engaging. So there's a lot of people that believe that America was really sort of duped into both wars, both world wars. People like Charles Lindbergh. And when FDR was elected right for his third term, I think his third term, right before World War II broke out, the people that voted for him were overwhelmingly against getting in another European war. So who got us into the war? England. England got us both into both wars. 20% of the population of America was German. You could walk down Rust Belt cities like Milwaukee and a certain part of Pittsburgh, and you could hear people speaking German even in the mid-20th century. So we had to get back into, just like he describes, back into the British Empire, because the British Empire was falling apart. So it got revived into the American Empire, just like British pound sterling, US dollar, crypto. And so World War II was all about communism. Everybody at the time thought that the Bolshevik Revolution came from the Ashkenazi. Winston Churchill wrote about it. Lots of people wrote about it. Like, all the intellectuals of the time called it that. So really, your revisionist history people like David Irving really see that like the whole 20th century, and so I won't go into any more because it'll turn me off. And that says a lot right there. Is really a play between these two groups of people, which results from the Balfour Declaration, results in the two world wars, and the most importantly, I have to get this in, the First World War eliminated all the Christian monarchs of Europe and the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire was broken up out of a Muslim world like he describes and was taken over by Europeans. See how this all fits together? And then in 48, we get the Ashkenazi move to the Holy Land. And as he points out, it's only Europeans who are fascinated with taking over the Holy Land. There's lots of other Christians and Jews around the Mediterranean that have no interest in this at all, even to this day. Edgy. So, but I wanted to also do a little bit of a religious thing. If you do a deep dive on the English Reformation, it's not like the Continental Reformation where the people of Northern Europe are just sick of the Pope. It goes into, remember the King James Bible was written by a guy who was openly gay, which is not a big deal. But they became obsessed with witchcraft. Macbeth was written right after King James, and Macbeth is it's not only a witchcraft play, it's misogynistic. It's really about a very, very evil person, not Macbeth, his wife. And King James also wrote a book about demonology. So the English world became very, and if I said Puritan this time of year to you, what do you think of? Witch trials. Think of pumpkins and Edgar Allan Poe, he's from Baltimore. But you think of all this spooky shit, and then you think of witch trials, right? There was a conversion there away from all things, and the whole Ivy League is all weirdo Puritans, even to this day. What do you mean? They're liberals. No, they're not. They're Puritans. The real character of the Ivy League is Puritans, even to this day. All right, let's go on the other side of Europe. As you've seen on the internet, I'm sure, a lot of people think that the Ashkenazi converted because they were pinned between the Muslim world and the Christian world. And they said, fuck this, we'll start our own thing, and became people like Stephen Miller and Netanyahu don't look Semitic at all, right? They're not dark. They don't look Mediterranean, not at all. So you have these two weird groups on both sides of Europe who everything revolving around the wars has to do with them, who then merge and create and go to Jerusalem, we'll just say that. So because if we keep using the word, it'll turn me off. So Gog and Magog are not going to be able to be destroyed by anything other than Allah, God. No other army, no other, which is pretty much the case, right? Nobody can really take us on directly, not even without nuclear weapons. No. But see, he thinks, and I'll just, throw this out there. Now that NATO is fucking with a re-Christianized, a faithful nation that has nuclear weapons, everything's changed. The dollar's down year to date 60%. The price of gold is up 60%. We are clearly bearing down on Venezuela, a tiny country, very poor, with the largest oil reserves in the world. We're in big trouble here. Our currency, just like the petrodollar, our currency doesn't have the petroleum behind it like it did. So the price of gold's going up and the dollar's going down. And we have to go make up some bullshit narco-terrorism thing about Venezuela, right? It's here. It's perfectly scripted. And if you like my content, I've explained that our friends, the Rothschilds, were pushed out of Russia and came here, and now they're exporting the oil and gas from here to Europe, blew up the pipeline, and now they have to go get more oil because they don't have enough oil. But it's time for the Linda finger. Let me tell you something, Linda. I know a lot about the whole energy thing in Russia. Russia is the second or third largest producer of everything. Coal, uranium, gold, oil, lumber, it's crazy. And what happened in Ukraine is that Putin and Xi are now at the point, and I've talked a lot about this for the last 5 years, where their official relationship is, quote, an unlimited partnership. What part of unlimited don't you understand? Energy, currency, money, debt refinance, commodities, the whole thing. And now we're talking about sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. What could go wrong with that? So let's do here in America. Again, if you're just joining us, we're going to do this next week. So, I mean, you're sitting here, I'm doing like, what's your Roman Empire, Constantine, like all this crazy stuff. But the lead intellectual for the World Economic Forum wrote a book called Man God. And Peter Thiel does speeches in the Silicon Valley about the Antichrist. As Tim Dillon says, he specializes in, AI and warfare and drones and secret, weapon systems and so forth. And then on the side, he doesn't play golf or like fish. He's a specialist on the Antichrist. So this isn't as crazy as it sounds. But for a lot of you are terrified right now and think that I maybe need to go have a drink and calm down. But politically, a lot of people are getting really out of whack. And so this week, what did we learn this week? Now Candace Owens is going to do this big thing about Charlie Kirk and going to go on and on and on like she did with Macron and his wife, father, whatever. We're going to go on and on and on and on about fucking Charlie Kirk. First question is, who cares? Second question is, he was not hit in the collarbone by a 30-06. There was not even an autopsy. What I want to get across to you people is the federal government, and you can beat me up in the DMs over this if you think I'm overplaying this. The federal government has been dissolved. There is no rule of law from the federal government. When Elon Musk went to Memphis to build that thing, they just built whole fucking power plants with no permits. You can't build a chicken coop in suburbia without a permit, but Elon Musk can go to Memphis and use more energy than the city of Memphis with no permits. There's no rule of law at the federal level. It's not that you're left, right, blue, red, male, female, for the global warming, LGBT, all this bullshit, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. You don't really think the universe works between two 80-year-old assholes, do you? No, it's now Candace Owens going to go in everybody who grew up in the country like I did knows, watching. If Charlie Kirk was hit by a 30-06 in the collarbone, you wouldn't be able to watch the video. You would, and there's no fucking way that the editors of TikTok would have let that video on. So something else happened there. But there's no rule of law. There's no autopsy, which means if he had a life insurance policy, it wouldn't pay out. There's no rule of law at the federal level. That's why we're sitting around with a tie on a Sunday instead of drinking beer and watching football, talking about Gog and Magog. So, okay, so we did the England Ashkenazi thing. That worked out pretty good. So in this country, what I've pointed out to people who have been like, my God, I've never thought of that. And the Monday after the Sunday that I said this, there was an editorial in the Financial Times that said that Alex Karp is a Marxist. And the day before, I gave a thing on here and said the exact same thing. Alex Karp was trained by Habermas, who came from the Frankfurt School, which are Ashkenazi Marxists sitting around talking to each other of how we can destroy and take over the United States. And we can't do it with regular Marxism. We need cultural Marxism. Those people are now aligned with the Stephen Miller people who were, this isn't well known either, the relationship between the Mustache Man people and the Zionist Ashkenazi people. If you go watch Spielberg's movie about it, the people chasing the people out of the apartment buildings are Stephen Millers. Those two groups of people are now running the United States of America at the federal level. They're here. It's Gog and Magog here, people. And the reason this is called Church and State, and the reason we're going to do a book next, if you have any, literary interest in like the history of Christianity, or can you imagine that Martin Luther loved to drink and eat pike and white wine, and he was fat, and table talk and the whole thing. And if you went to him and said, a bunch of Northern Europeans are going to take over North America, this giant continent with 10 feet of topsoil, and they're going to have a separation of church and state, you know what he would say? He said, one day they're all going to get up and think that they're man gods. Yep. The problem with church and state in America is we have neither. We have a guy in a football stadium in Houston who delivers the gospel in front of a globe, who makes $56 million a year. He's a man god. Now, just so you're clear, that explains to us that what makes humans like gods is data. So we'll do that next week. Data is how we all become God. Like I'm smiling because it's sort of funny and sort of not funny. This is all completely fucking insane. This is Gog and Magog shit. Okay, but let's all calm down. It's in the Quran that someday they will return the people to the town. So he wrote the book, and he calls it Jerusalem in the Quran. He said it took 14 years to return them to Jerusalem. You understand? Let's do masonry. Should probably wind this down with masonry. I forgot to do the car thing. We'll get to that in a minute. So little universities, little colleges around North America are going out of business like one after another. Like my niece went to Cabrini, cute little Catholic school down on the main line outside of Philadelphia. Every week there's some cute little, usually with some sort of Christian background. If you come in, especially in the Rust Belt where I grew up, there's these magnificent churches in every city, usually built by sometimes Italians, usually Irish and German Catholics built these things like right in the middle, like St. Patrick's in New York was built. There's a great book called American Catholic, which will tell you that like 90% of the money to build St. Patrick's on Fifth Avenue came from people who could barely afford an extra potato. Now all these colleges are going, like literally in 50 to 100 years, you won't even know that there were Christians in North America. Like from an archaeological standpoint. Christian burial is becoming rare. Nobody has $27,000 to bury mom anymore. They get cremated, right? Christian burial is traditionally like, stone with some crosses, and somebody reads the Bible, things like that. All of that's going away. All of our Christian, little cute Christian stone universities are going away. It's what's your Roman Empire? Like, white people are generally like tattooed and like have weird jewelry in their face. What's your Roman Empire? This is what's happening, people. The problem with church and state in America is we don't have either one of them anymore. We have these weirdos like J.D. Vance who wears eyeliner, like pretending to be some sort of new trad Catholic. This is why we're talking about the book of Revelation. So, all right, let's get back to the gold thing. We are moving away from the dollar it's not like a collapse and, run to buy Bitcoin. I mean, that's one way to look at it. I think that's sort of a shallow way. So for 5 years, I've done a thing on here. I spent a lot of time talking about Ethereum, not because I think it's the only crypto. People even now are like, do you think Ethereum's better than XRP? And I'm like, everybody calm down. That's not what we're doing here. But if you really want to understand think about the word Ethereum. It's metaphysical. It's almost religious. In other words, we're going to create like an ether that everybody's going to operate on. What do you mean an ether? Yeah. I mean, I'll just sort of blurt it out so it doesn't sound completely insane. I think like the Ethereum worldview of like blockchain and like decentralized systems is really the antithesis of this kind of shit. These are the people who don't get it. Problem is, these people run the federal government. All those people that sat around the table a couple months ago with Trump from the Silicon Valley, they've been Democrats for 40 years. Gog and Magog. The college thing is really sort of, believe it or not, like, we used to send like upper middle class kids to like read, Poe and Emerson and Milton and Shakespeare and stuff, and now we're not going to. They were really being trained in a kind of a Christian Western worldview. It's going away. So let's get back to just basic finance as we wind this whole thing down. So there is a big crack in the American system right now, and believe it or not, of all things, it's cars. Remember, it was houses in 2008. Now it's cars. The average car payment's $750. 1 in 5 car payments is over $1,000 a month. I mean, if you think about what America really became like through the 20th century, like our great cities like LA and Detroit and Houston, like these massive like car-based systems. Everybody's going to have a car, right? No one needs trains. No one needs public transportation. If you don't have a car, like, it's there's a rupture in like our banking and bond system over the fucking used car financing. Like, how do we screw up cars? Well, we did that too. No, but serious, it's taken a pretty good toll. If you remember 3 years ago or whatever, we had those banks go out in California. Remember that the first one that went out was the Silicon Valley Bank. Peter Thiel tweeted that he's taken all his money out, which caused a run on the deposits, which were 98% uninsured. Hold on, I love this shit. The CEO of that Silicon Valley Bank sat on the board of the regulating body, this Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. I think there's only 12 of them, right? And you'd think that somebody would go like, Bob, you have like $6 billion in deposits and 98% of them are FDIC uninsured. No. There's no regulation in America, people. There's no financial regulation in anything. There's no government. There's no federal government. And before you panic, what I'm suggesting is that you start to think, you're going to have to start to think more locally. You're going to have to stop thinking about Sam Altman and porn and Walmart and taking over 15% of the world's electricity and going to Mars with fucking Elon Musk and becoming man god. Like this wacko, crazy thing that America's going through right now. It's going to fall back on the states. I'm getting DMs from people all around the country. They're like, we're doing everything we can. This is a civil war. And it's over technology. It's not guys in wool uniforms chasing each other up and down the Shenandoah Valley. It's in the tech. And it's weird. Okay, some Arabic words to go out on. So our Muslim friends use the word facade a lot, which means like a corrupt lying. So that ties in with like the used car thing. these loans are going out, they're going into bankruptcy and so forth. The judge is standing there like, well, you guys have like 47,000 cars on the lot ready to be sold, right? And like the two lawyers look at each other and go, no, they're gone. Like the facade of American finance, in both like the English word of facade, like a fake thing on the front of the building, and facade like the Arabic word that means corruption or lying, or we're going to go to Mars with Elon Musk and the rocker panels are flying off the fucking pickup trucks. It's facade. The other word for the day is al-Jasad. That's the kind of virus like corruption who's the sidekick of Dajjal. It's one of my favorites. Another one that I don't talk about enough on here that Oswald Spengler came up with is the word fellaheen. He predicted that we would move into a world of fellaheen economics, where everybody is going to live like the word fellah in Arabic means roughly like a homeless, itinerant agricultural worker. Isn't that exactly what America has become? And now we have ICE running around terrorizing the fellaheen, the fellas, the barely people living at or below subsistence. I think we did that in the South before the Civil War. That I think that was slavery or something like that. They weren't Hispanic people. They were like from the other continent. That was... Okay, so remember on 9/11, you could buy 40 ounces of gold with 10 grand. Now you can buy 2. And remember the big fear that we were going to be like absorbed into the caliphate. Remember that? That the 6'5" guy with the beard on what's it called when you get your kidneys done? Dialysis. Remember the guy in the cave, 6'5" with a big beard on dialysis? He wanted to recreate the caliphate. Here we are at the end of the War on Terror, people. They've created the caliphate. It's based in Jerusalem. It's run by Gog and Magog. If you had to put 2 names on it, it'd be Alex Karp and Stephen Miller. These people just go watch them on YouTube. They openly just we have no intentions of obeying any law anywhere. It's Gog and Magog, people. Stephen Miller just says there, the enemy is within. In the United States of America, with how many fucking weapons here? And this guy gets elected by this fake conservative named Donald Trump, who merges with the Silicon Valley, Gog and Magog, and just says, we're going to fucking do whatever we want, and nobody can stop us. On CNN, he says, President has plenary authority, unlimited authority. Gog and Magog are here, people. It's church and state. Okay. Tell us something that's... Okay. Unless you're going to leave the country, unless you like to see middle-aged Hispanic women thrown in vans, if you want to do something for your country, it's going to be a lot like what started the Civil War. Why did the Civil War really start? Because everybody hated slavery. Nope. It was the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And all those people in the West, which was not Wyoming at the time, it was Illinois, realized that they were going to be attacked by ICE kinds of people. And that's what happened in Kansas. Remember Bleeding Kansas? It's funny they've never made a movie about that, because you wouldn't be able to watch it. They realized that they were going to have people run around what we think of as the Midwest and the heartland, like ICE, and terrorize people. And this is why the only 2 people who really understood what the fucking Civil War was all about were from the West, and they were Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses Grant. And now we have people who think that the tech, and I guess what I'm trying to get to is, this is the word I want to use here is frontier. Okay, the frontier is now not the farmland of Kansas. The frontier is technology, right? And these people think that they're going to become God. I mean, I shouldn't even smile. It's like, it's terrifying and it's Satanism. And unless you fucking do something about it, it's going to take over and completely do a What's Your Roman Empire. So you can join us on Substack. We have a lot going on over there. Because the way you're going to be able to move in through the technologies, you have to remember these are open sourced, decentralized systems. Tell all your friends and family to get the fuck off of OpenAI. It's there for one reason, and that's to take control of your brain. Same with Grok, same with all of them. I mean, there's a YouTube video of Larry Ellison say, we're going to make people conform. Now we'll be able to use this technology to make people conform. Our friends who wrote the book, The Fourth Turning, predicted this whole fucking thing in 1991. The Fourth Turning said, one day you're going to wake up into like an 1860, a 1776, and a kind of a depression all at the same time. And it's here. So, it's a lot of good stuff. This is going to be on Substack. I'm such a pushover when I don't know if it's going to be paid or not. I'll decide in the next half hour. But we've made a major partnership with a technology partner to focus, I'll leave you with this word, to focus on things that are agentic. You're not going to become God by playing with the data. What makes humans humans is that you act like an agent. John and Paul didn't write 800 songs in 30 songs in 8 years because they had all the data, right? They wrote those songs, I'm talking about the Beatles, of course. They wrote those songs because they were agents. They'd lock themselves in a hotel room and said, we're not getting out of here until we write the next top 10 hit. It's time to start acting like Americans again. Have a nice week.